Welcome to this edition of LEX 18's Digital Conversation. I'm Dia Davidson. You know, it's hard to believe, but it's time to start thinking about getting our lawns ready for the fall. So joining us to talk more about that is Richard Weber. He's with Springhouse Gardens. It's so good to always see you.
Nice to see you.
Well, let's talk a little bit about it. Not all of us are green thumbs, so we have to come banging down your door.
Well, that's good. That's why we exist.
So let's talk a little bit about getting these yards ready for the fall.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to do at this time of the year. We've been blessed to have such a great summer season. Yeah. Beautiful spring, gorgeous summer, plenty of moisture. So it's prime time to make some improvements in your backyard garden. And some people only have a lawn, and some people have a yard. A lot of people don't have a garden.
Right.
And when I use the term garden, it's a collection of trees and shrubs and flowers and a place that makes you want to go outside.
And you can add koi ponds and all kinds of.
You can
really make them
really
elaborate. And you guys do that at Springhouse.
We do. We do all sorts of landscape work. I specialize in unusual and hard to find trees and shrubs, perennials, native plants. We do a lot of native plants too, just trying to get people in touch with what would have been growing here in Kentucky, which is really pretty cool that Kentucky is so unique. I mean, every place is unique, so if you can restore your little corner of the world with plants that should be growing there, then your native flora and fauna, is much more stable and much more secure. So.
But suppose somebody wanted something that was exotic or different. Can our soil handle that?
Well, a lot of these exotic plants actually do better than some of the natives, believe it or not. But what happens is some of them outcompete a lot of our natural vegetation. So it's best to really do a little bit of research or go to a place like ours where we're really trying to put in plants in central Kentucky that aren't going to take over the world. Right. We've already got enough of those. But there are some really nice non-native plants that should and very well command our attention and would make a beautiful addition to any home or garden.
But for the weekend hack who's got to take care of it, you probably should start off kind of slow and easy, right?
Well, I mean, the easiest and best thing for anybody to do if you're starting into this realm of landscaping is plant a tree.
Okay.
If a world devoid of trees is pretty harsh and pretty stark. So if you don't really know what to do, think about starting, planting a tree. And fall is the perfect time to plant trees. So there's all sorts of different types of trees, even shrubs. Smaller versions of trees will work too. Right. So just get started. It doesn't need to be this big ordeal. Right. Do a little bit of research and think about what it is that you would like in your own home, business, or your own garden. If you like color, then do some research or look around and see what your neighbors are growing. Some people start with vegetables. I started as a vegetable gardener as a youngster, and then I went from vegetables to flowers, from flowers to perennials, which a perennial is just a flower that comes back every year.
Right.
And then I started really learning more about trees and shrubs as I got into my professional career. And trees and shrubs are just the backbone of any garden. Wow. So that's a good place to start.
Okay, well then you brought some pictures of some beautiful things that we can find at Springhouse. And let's talk a little bit about some of the care for some of them.
Yeah, well, this is the pictures that are on the screen right now. That's a sassafras grove that's at Lexington Cemetery.
Wow.
Since I'm a Lexington guy, born and raised here, I love Lexington Cemetery. I've been going there since I was a little kid. Right. Most people don't realize that it's an arboretum. Right. It has a collection of unbelievable trees. So this is down in one of their sunken garden areas. Sassafras just makes a wonderful fall addition. And that's a bunch of sassafras trunks that are coming up, and their leaves turn all shades of red, yellow, orange, and they have three distinct shapes. And this picture, it shows you it's got the spoon, the fork, and the knife. So you have a whole place setting there. Right. But it's a great tree. That we haven't had them available for many years. We've got them available this fall at Springhouse Gardens as a small containerized tree.
But now when we think of sassafras, we think about it being used to make
root beer. Yeah, they don't do that anymore because they found out, and you can buy sassafras in containers, so that's what this picture is. They found out that root beer made from sassafras has carcinogens in it. So you're not going to be seeing people digging up root of sassafras, but the scent is there if you are digging it. Every part of the plant is fragrant. It's a wonderful tree. It's very unusual here in central Kentucky because they grow more easily in western Kentucky and even eastern Kentucky. Here in central Kentucky, they're not really found very often. So for us to have them available, and you can plant them, they do get up to about 30 to 50 feet tall.
Do they really?
And they do tend to sucker and sprout. So it's kind of a hard tree to place in a typical landscape, but if you don't have a lot in your yard, buy a little sassafras, get it started. You'll be rewarded with really interesting leaves, foliage, and fragrance. So it's
But now
pretty
we've
cool.
had trouble with insects and
Yeah.
pests that have infiltrated a lot of the trees, especially in the Lexington-Fayette County area.
Right.
We were talking about the
Well,
borers.
ash trees
Yeah.
used to be one of our favorite trees, and they were planted all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, not just in Kentucky, but Michigan, Ohio, the whole eastern United States. And the emerald ash borer has come in from overseas and has just decimated our native ash population.
Oh, wow.
So this is a good reason that we recommend planting lots of different species of trees. You don't want to just plant what's called a monoculture. If you just plant all the same tree down every single city street, then you get a disease or an insect or some other problem that comes in and can wipe them all out. So it's much better not to just plant everything that your neighbor's planting. Try for something different.
But now, to be able to preserve those trees, is it possible, or once it's
No,
hit-
it's possible for the ash trees, but you have to treat them every year. And it gets quite expensive because it's the treatment. You have to plant. You have to treat it so much per size of per caliper inch of tree.
Okay.
And the chemical costs a lot more as you have to go into these bigger and bigger trees. But if you think about the value of these larger trees, it could be well worth it. So.
And it does increase your property value,
Absolutely, having shade,
shrubs,
having shelter. So, planting a tree, again, I would just encourage all of our viewers and listeners and to really think about planting a tree this year. It's something you can do with your kids, with your loved ones, and you're planting it for posterity. You're planting it for generations to come, as long as you choose the right tree for the right spot. So that's what I would love to have more people do.
But a lot of ladies and some gentlemen like to get out there and put flowers, especially,
Well,
and in those hanging potted plants and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about some of the flowers that you have available.
Well, fall is the perfect time to add a little orange, a little yellow, a little burgundy to your life. So mums, asters, ornamental grasses, all these things are going to be, and pansies. Thank you. Yeah, we always bring in pansies and things.
But they're so delicate, though.
No, pansies are a lot tougher than you
Are they
think.
really?
Don't you remember all those talks we had with Lee?
that's
He's always
true.
calling them pansies, and then I'm like, no, they're tough.
They're tough. They're tough.
Yeah,
that's
no,
true.
they're great. They'll live through the wintertime, and they actually prefer the cooler temperatures. They don't like the heat. So the fall is a great time to think about adding some pansies into your pots and planters. If we don't have a terribly cold winter, they'll make it through the winter and come back and bloom again in the spring.
Do they spread?
They don't really spread. They will seed. You can get pansies to seed themselves, but typically we try to teach people to deadhead the pansies, removing the old blooms, and you want to keep them from going to seed because that will make them produce more flowers. But if all your summer flowers are looking a little tired and peaked, because even though it's been a nice cooler summer, these flowers, they basically are here to grow and to die. The regular
to give
annual
joy
flowers.
to
To give joy.
To give joy.
Yeah, have a
while they're
beautiful life, and then
How
then
often
move
do you have
on.
to water those?
Which ones?
The-
Pansies and mums?
Well, all of them. Kind of. Is there a rule of
Well,
thumb, or
September and October are our driest months. Most people don't think about that, but September, October are the driest months in Kentucky. So if you have just bought these fresh mums and pansies and you put them on a sunny patio and it's hot and dry, because it's still going to be warm in September, once a day.
Okay.
Yeah, and your plants will let you know. If they don't perk back up, if they droop down a little bit and you water them, perk up, they're great. If they don't perk up, you waited too late.
And
So
you just
they
have
do
to start
need-
all over again.
It's like having a little baby.
Yeah, true.
You
true,
can't
true.
just have a baby and just it won't feed itself.
No, it won't.
So
It
the
won't.
plants are kind of, they are dependent on our care.
And they like to be talked to. There's nothing
Yeah,
wrong with
they
that.
do.
They do.
Yeah.
How about shrubs? Holly bushes, especially this time of year with the red bee.
Fall is a great time to put in any kind of trees, shrubs, perennials, as long as we get them planted before about the beginning of December. So October, November, great month. September too, but the earlier you plant, the more you have to water those. Because you do need to make sure all of your trees and shrubs have at least an inch of water per week, especially when they've been newly planted. So if it's dry,
is that to help set the roots?
Get them? Yeah, because they go through shock. You know, these plants are grown in containers or have the balled and burlapped wrapped around the root balls, and you're digging them around, you're moving them, you're putting them into new location. And we always recommend kind of roughing up when you take them out of a pot, you want to score with a sharp knife or a trowel or a shovel. You want to break those roots up along the outside edge of the pot so that they're not just growing around themselves and circling themselves, because they'll end up strangling.
Oh, gosh.
So you want those roots, you got to tease those roots
and pull them apart. Okay.
So that kind of stresses them a little bit. So you need to give them extra attention, and maybe even mix up some what's called a root stimulator or a fertilizer, like a transplant fertilizer, to just help them get over that initial shock.
You got to do that every year, don't you? And I guess also put down something to kill bugs and insects that attract.
You really need to kind of keep an eye on insects and things, but the more that you're getting into landscape and things, and if you're trying to do more native plants, remember that insects are not all bad. Insects feed all of our birds and wildlife and things. So you don't necessarily need to kill all these bugs and things. You need to start thinking about, are they really killing? Yeah, if they're not really hurting your plant, and a lot of them aren't, it's just more cosmetic. It's kind of like going and getting an apple that's organic, and it might have a few blemishes and things, or you want it all pumped with chemicals just because it looks good. Plants are kind of the same way. It's good if you can tolerate some insect damage on some of these plants, because that's what the birds need to eat.
Gotcha.
So it's a completely different thought process than it used to be, and we're trying to be more thoughtful about the indiscriminate use of chemicals and things. So we try not to spray any chemicals. Let the bugs eat, and just
as long as they're not destroying.
As long as they're not destroying. Yeah.
Last question. Let's talk a little bit about maintenance of shrubbery. Is this the time to be pruning and kind of shaping up things before the winter?
It's okay to do a little bit of shaping up, but usually the best time for that is going to be midsummer. If you do too much trimming now, what you're going to do is promoting new growth, because pruning usually makes the buds start growing. And if you do too much or too sharp or too heavy of a pruning, you're going to force more growth out, and then that growth won't have a chance to really toughen up before it gets cold, and then that causes damage. What I typically do, because we have wreath workshops at Springhouse every fall, or every late fall and winter, which is a lot of fun. So I encourage our viewers to look at our website, go to our Facebook and Instagram, and sign up or look at what the wreath workshops are. But we do all of our trimming of our evergreens in late November, and we use all those clippings and turn them into beautiful wreaths. So talk about getting things from the land. We don't even buy any greenery, and we use it. We harvest it all right there on our property.
And Springhouse is another beautiful spot for weddings too, right?
We're doing weddings the fall season. So if you're thinking about a fall wedding next year, we're booked up. We've been booked up for almost a year for this fall. So now's the time to come out and check out the barn. If you're looking for a beautiful garden wedding, or a rustic barn, or a combination. We are booking for 2018, and it's booking up fairly quickly. So it's really fun. We can only handle up to about 225. We can stretch it to 250. Our sweet spot is 75 to 150 guests. And we would do those all the time, I forget, but we just do one.
And the father of the bride's probably, or the mother of the bride, whoever's paying the bill, or the bride and the groom,
they
like that too. So, Richard, it's always good to see you.
It's
so interesting.
Indeed,
indeed. And we thank you for watching this LEX18 Digital Conversation. Be sure to follow us on lex18.com for more digital conversations. I'm Dia Davidson. Until next time.